The founder of IKEA was worth somewhere between $20 and $50 billion. He drove a 1993 Volvo, flew economy class, ate $1 meatballs in his own cafeteria, bought his clothes at flea markets, and in 1982, he announced he'd given his entire fortune to charity. This wasn't a young founder pinching pennies. This was Kamprad at peak wealth, Forbes top 10, tens of billions, living like a man on a pension. Every journalist called him humble. He wasn't. The frugality wasn't accidental. It was structural, and once it becomes clear what it was holding up, IKEA never looks the same again. Start with what IKEA actually sells. It's not furniture. It's a price point. IKEA engineers its products backward. They decide the retail price first, a $5 side table, a $1 light bulb, and then figure out how to manufacture it at that price without losing money. Flat pack shipping, so they can fit more units per truck. No assembly labor. No white glove delivery. The customer drives to the warehouse. The customer loads the car. The customer builds the furniture at home with an Allen wrench. The entire model is a fanatical compression of every cost in the supply chain. That only works if cost-cutting is treated as identity, not policy. The moment executives start expensing business-class flights and client dinners at restaurants that have a sommelier, the model starts to crack. Culture follows behavior, not memos. Kamprad solved this without writing a single rule about it. When the founder, worth $30 billion, flies economy and takes the bus, no regional manager is going to expense a hotel upgrade. When he eats cafeteria meatballs every day, no executive is scheduling a working lunch at a steakhouse. His life was the policy. His choices were the enforcement mechanism. He didn't manage a culture of cost elimination. He performed it in front of 200,000 employees every single day for 50 years. And that solved one problem, but there was a second, one that could have turned IKEA's own customers against it. Think about what IKEA actually asks of you. You drive to an industrial warehouse on the edge of town. You walk a one-way maze that takes the better part of an hour. You eat in a cafeteria because you're too deep inside to leave. You find your flat pack boxes in a warehouse the size of an airport terminal, load them yourself, haul them to your car, drive home, and spend a Sunday afternoon reading assembly instructions with diagrams, but no words. That is an enormous amount of unpaid labor. IKEA has essentially outsourced its entire logistics operation for free. If the man who built that system lived in a mansion and flew on a private jet, customers would eventually feel used. The math would become visible. Kamprad's frugality made that math invisible. He eats the same meatballs. He sits in the same economy seat. The whole system starts to feel less like a company extracting value from its customers and more like a shared philosophy. Everyone doing their part to keep prices low. That image also made IKEA's central brand promise feel credible. The promise is good design for everyone, not just people who can afford it. Everyone. A billionaire founder who throws lavish parties quietly undermines that promise. A founder who haggles at flea markets is the promise. Every photograph of Kamprad in a cheap jacket was an advertisement for the brand that no marketing budget could replicate. It worked for 50 years without a single paid placement. But the culture and the brand were only the visible part. Behind both of them was something much larger. And it started in Sweden in 1973. The Swedish government had introduced some of the highest personal tax rates in the developed world. For the very wealthy, the marginal rate hit 85%. For every additional krona Kamprad earned, the state took 85%. In 1973, he left, moved to Switzerland, and didn't pay Swedish taxes again for 42 years. But leaving the country was only the first move. The deeper problem was IKEA itself, a company generating billions in revenue, operating across dozens of countries, with no structure designed to manage any of it from a tax perspective. Kamprad needed to restructure the entire thing. In 1982, the same year he announced his great charitable donation, he transferred ownership of IKEA's retail operations to the Stichting Inca Foundation, based in the Netherlands. On paper, a charitable foundation. Its stated purpose: promoting innovation in architectural and interior design. In practice, a structure that pays no tax on its ownership income cannot be taken over by outside parties, cannot be broken up by inheritance law, and remains under family influence through its board. The charitable donation that earned him a decade of flattering headlines? That was the transfer. And the IKEA store with the meatballs and the maize and the flat pack boxes? It doesn't actually own IKEA, not the part that matters. The IKEA brand, the name, the trademark, the concept, the blue and yellow, all of it is owned by a completely separate company called IKEA Systems, based in Luxembourg. Every IKEA store on Earth, regardless of where it operates, pays IKEA Systems a royalty fee of 3% of its total revenue. Before a single cost is deducted, 3% leaves the store. A store doing $100 million in sales sends $3 million to Luxembourg before it pays a single employee. That is over $1 billion a year flowing out of retail operations, tax deductible in every jurisdiction where those stores operate. That money routes through Luxembourg, where the effective tax rate sits below 2%, through a foundation in Liechtenstein, through a series of holding companies spread across multiple jurisdictions. The European Parliament opened an investigation and found over €1 billion in taxes avoided across a 6-year window. The structure is not hidden in the sense of being secret. The legal entities are registered. The royalty agreements are real. A determined journalist could find the filings. What protected it wasn't secrecy, it was misdirection. If the founder clearly isn't spending the money, if he lives like a pensioner, if he gave it all away, then where exactly is $40 billion? Nobody asked because the way he lived already answered it. The Volvo, the economy seat, the meatballs, the flea market coat. One set of behaviors that controlled the culture, disarmed the customers, validated the brand, and kept the financial architecture behind all of it out of the spotlight for decades. Most companies need 4 strategies for 4 problems. Kamprad needed 1. Looking poor. He kept it up until the end. In 2014, at 88, he moved back to Sweden, paid taxes for the final 4 years of his life. Died in 2018 at 91. The structure didn't notice. The Inca Foundation still owns the retail operations. IKEA Systems still collects its 3% from every store on Earth. The royalties still route through Luxembourg. The architecture operates exactly as designed. Every weekend, millions of people drive to warehouse stores on the edge of town. They walk the maze. They eat the meatballs. Inside a system one man spent 50 years designing. Not to sell cheap furniture, though it does that too. To ensure that as little of the money as possible ever left the structure he built. And the whole time he looked like a man who had nothing to hide. Because the coat was cheap, and the car was old. And he always ordered the meatballs.